So are economic conditions better today than they were 2 years ago, and you didn't raise taxes? I don't think that you can say yes to that. So I've been out talking to people about what I call establishing the new normal. Things are going to be very different, and the way Mecklenburg County looks is going to be very, very different for at least the short term. The services that we provide are going to be different, and the manner in which we provide the services are going to be very different. And guess what? We're not in this by ourselves. All over this country, I mean, I read ICMA, International City Managers Association, news briefs already this morning, and I read from what they're doing in Fairfax, Virginia, closing parks. I've read what they're doing. I mean, I understand the city of Phoenix just laid off 1,400 employees, and they laid off 500 police officers and firefighters is what I heard yesterday. I hadn't verified that, but I heard that yesterday. They laid off uniformed personnel. Somewhere in Virginia, I just read this morning where they've decided to forego the hiring, they forego using stimulus money to hire police officers because there was a threshold that they were supposed to maintain in order to receive the stimulus money, and they're saying we don't know if we can afford to maintain where we are. That's where we are. I mean, I keep looking at these revenue numbers, and I'm concerned that my gap may even be bigger than I'm saying that it is, because we cannot project with any degree of certainty what we're going to have on the sales tax horizon. Charles and you are not going to like my target numbers that I give him next week. We are going to have layoffs this year. And the layoffs that we're going to have are going to be very, very substantial. You will have to decide, Charles and his board will have to decide what level of service you're going to have to provide. I'm going to give him a number, and he's going to have to deal with that number, and the Board of County Commissioners are ultimately going to have to decide whether or not I have lost it. I mean, whether or not I'm doing what's the right thing for this community in terms of my recommendation. One of the issues that we are confronted with is like the issues that we're confronted with in our own home. We have an assumption that the house that we bought, that it's going to increase in value, and you're going to be able to use the equity that you gain in that house to help pay for retirement, to help pay for your children's education, to help buy that vacation home. And all of a sudden things stop. And that doesn't grow, that equity does not grow, then you have to resort to other options to achieve some of the things that you thought you were going to be achieved if things had tracked along the way that you thought they would. That's the environment, quite candidly, that we as a government are facing. The assumption that we had made in this environment are not realistic assumptions. And so as you think about your new normal and you think about your service delivery, I would suggest to you that you think about other ways that you can provide services in this community and ways that we can better collaborate with one another. But it's going to be a difficult time, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not my style. I'm just not going to sugarcoat for you where we are. I'll take any questions that you have of me. I hate to start your morning out like this, but it's it's.
I know that the city just announced the other day that they were going to be pulling funds out of the rainy day fund to help cover this remaining fiscal year deficit. Does the county have anything like that the county can use?
Well, we have what we call fund balance. We're using fund balance, what we call the excess fund balance, to pay for things like debt service and pay-go. So we're using ours in a different way than the city uses its quote-unquote rainy day fund. We have a higher debt level, pretty significant debt level that we're paying for, and so we use up a lot of that fund balance. Hung, did you hear the question about the city using its reserve fund and whether or not we have a fund similar to what the city has?
We do not. The city created a special, I guess, rainy day fund to deal with the uncertainty in the sales tax. They put about $9 million into it. And so they set that aside in case revenues drop, they could,
Yep.
instead of cutting services, that's the first place they would go to balance their budget.
Yep.
Did not include anything like that.
Yeah, so our debt levels, we run a debt level right at about almost 20% of our total operating budget. And then we have this excess funds that come in, and we took those funds and we said, instead of using those for the normal operation of county government, let's not do it that way. Let's use it for things like what we call our pay-go fund, 50% of it for pay-go fund, so that we can reduce our reliance on borrowing, which ultimately saves us in the long run, and to use the other half of it to apply towards debt service. And our debt service cost, it's simply the credit card payment that you make. You draw down some funds from your credit card, and it's just the principal interest you pay on the balance to retire that particular debt. That's your debt service. Our debt service, we've been, if you think about it, we have built some great facilities in this community. Imaginon is one, the public-private partnership, but there were other borrowing that we did to make that happen using what we call certificates of participation to make sure that we were going to build a great facility. We went above and beyond what the citizens voted for a courthouse. The citizens voted $90 million to build a courthouse, but we said if you really want to build a courthouse that is going to give us the capacity for growth, that we could build it, not use all of the space in it immediately, preserve some of it for the future. We added about another $45 to $50 million of costs from COPS, certificates of participation, to build that particular courthouse, but we still have to pay for that debt. Citizens voted $516 million, I think it was, a couple of years ago, to build schools. When we had a bond referendum that failed, we came back, issued COPS to get some things designed, and then we came back and said, these things have started. Citizens overwhelmingly voted for schools. And so we're having to pay all that. Our debt is staying pretty constant. Debt levels are staying constant. But because debt levels are staying constant and revenue is growing, is declining, that's what's creating the gap. Service demand also, on the other hand, is increasing. You see it in your libraries. I mean, I get out of my car. I mean, I live in the Ballantyne area, so I get out, walk in the library. I go to Morrocroft, I go to South Library, I go over to the library over in Mint Hill. I've been to many of them, just to walk in and kind of walk around and see what's going on and walk out. I know their service demand increases. And the point of that, the other point I'm going to make is there's going to be some service slippage, and our capacity to respond is going to be difficult. And in this environment, we can also expect that citizen complaints will likely rise as we go forward. Yeah, go ahead.
What's happening with sales tax revenue? I know the last meeting that I attended, I think with the Board of County Commissioners, you were still awaiting December sales tax receipts. Is that fairly stable, or is that growing at all from last year?
Well, I called Dina DiOrio yesterday, and sales taxes for December came in. That December sales tax is the one that you want to base your your fortune on. And based on what we got yesterday, we did not have good fortune.